The hills are alive with the sound of Formula One engines this weekend as we head to the Styrian Alps for the Formula One Austrian Grand Prix of 2025. This is a track that has produced some extremely dramatic moments over the decades. Even if you go back to the days of the Österreich back in the 70s and 80s, this track has always produced drama. So I'm going to try and narrow it down to 5 of my personal favourite moments from Austria over the decades. Now, we're going to go all the way back 50 years ago, in fact, to the 1975 Austrian Grand Prix, an extremely wet race they wouldn't even consider running in these conditions nowadays. And in fact, they didn't actually manage to go full distance with this one. The race was called early, and leading at that time was Vittorio Brambilla in his March. The Italian had never even had a podium, let alone a victory, but he was leading comfortably ahead of James Hunt. When the red flag got showed and the race was curtailed early, Brambilla actually spun across the line. Spin and win. Somehow he managed to do it. Had the race gone another lap or another 2 laps because of the red flag rules, of course you count back to the previous lap, so it wouldn't have mattered anyway, even if someone passed him. But the fact that he spun out on the straight just shows how wet and how dangerous it was, and that was indeed the only podium, the only victory of his entire Formula One career, something that he would never, of course, forget for the rest of his life. Well, let's skip ahead to 1982 now. The Österreich Ring was a very high-speed track. The current Red Bull Ring is, of course, very high speed as well, but back then it was even faster, it was even more flowing, and that basically meant that the draft, the slipstream, was very powerful here, not unlike circuits such as Monza. And we had Elio De Angelis and Keke Rosberg battling it out for the lead. Interestingly, at the finish of the race, these were the only 2 guys on the lead lap, but the leading pair themselves were separated by such a tiny margin, 0.05 seconds. You can hardly tell looking at the footage who actually managed to win it, but it was De Angelis. Of course, Rosberg would have the final laugh though, because he won his only Formula One World Championship in 1982 later that year, and with only 1 victory to his name in that campaign as well. Now, let's talk about turn 3 at Austria. Really, it should be turn 2. That little kink for me before that, it's not a turn at all. It's just a straight, basically. The second braking zone, to avoid any doubt, because there's 3 incidents in a row I've got here where there've been controversial clashes going into that braking zone. It's always a controversial clash going into there because you can brake very, very late. It's an uphill braking zone and there's plenty of room to overtake on the inside or the outside depending on where your opponent is, and you've also got a long straight down to the braking zone at turn 4 as well to recover if you are overtaken or fail to pass during that corner. But in 1999 there was a big crash here, literally on the first lap, I do believe. David Coulthard and Mika Hakkinen, the McLaren teammates, collided through this corner. Basically, Coulthard misjudged his braking, went into the side of Mika Hakkinen. Hakkinen spun around, and as a result of that, he would have been very angry, no doubt about it, because in the end, Coulthard failed to win this race. It was Eddie Irvine, the man who a lot of people said would have no chance of winning the World Championship that year, but he actually run it pretty close to Mika Hakkinen going into the final round of Suzuka. Of course, Hakkinen did win the title, but Irvine was close. He wasn't far away at all when it came to that, going into the final round. So, yeah, it seemed at that point as though McLaren were very much dropping the ball and fumbling, and this was definitely a big mistake for them. Controversial clashes between teammates powered by Mercedes engines. We'd see the exact same thing for number 4 on my list 17 years later with Sir Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg. Hamilton was desperately trying to overtake Nico Rosberg and was clearly much faster, but Rosberg was getting the elbows out. He was making it difficult for his teammate in the closing stages. Going into the braking zone at turn 4, Hamilton went around the outside. He broke later and thought that he potentially could have cleared Nico Rosberg, but Rosberg didn't even try to take the corner. He basically parked his car in the middle of the road and prevented Hamilton from turning. Hamilton did turn though, however the two did collide, of course, with both getting some damage, in particular Nico Rosberg. Hamilton overtook him and won the race. Rosberg fell behind Kimi Räikkönen and Max Verstappen and fell off the podium. Rosberg did get a penalty for this incident, but the penalty was essentially a slap on the wrist. It was 10 seconds or 5 seconds, something like that, but it didn't change his finishing position, and in the end, that was crucial because he did win the championship that year, did Rosberg, by a relatively small margin. These races definitely made a difference, 100%. But the last one, we're going to talk about one from last year. Lando Norris and Max Verstappen. Oh boy. One of many clashes between these two during that season. Probably not the most controversial, but this one definitely did divide opinion between the Red Bull and McLaren fan bases. These were again the leading two drivers in this race. Lando Norris trying to overtake Max Verstappen. The balance of power very much shifting towards McLaren at this point, but Max was still doing enough to win Grand Prix. He was doing enough to be consistent and maintain that advantage he had in the championship. Norris needed to pass him. He needed to get as many points over him as possible. That gap was big, but he had a long time to overtake him, so he had to just keep winning races, and this was absolutely an opportunity to do that. However, they collided going into the braking zone of turn 3. There were many battles before that. Both drivers had damage. Norris eventually retired from that. I believe Norris actually got a penalty for that. Didn't affect anything, obviously, because he never finished anyway. And all while Max Verstappen continued in that race. Whose fault was it? Let's not get into that. I probably spoke about it at the time. Let my opinions be known about that. But I'll let you guys get your thoughts on this in the comments below as always. What's your favourite moment from the Austrian Grand Prix over the years, guys? Let us know in the comments below. Like, share, comment, subscribe if you want to see more of this, and have a fantastic day wherever you are in the world today, and we'll see you very soon.